Good morning. Our Old Testament lesson today comes from the book of Exodus, beginning at the first verse of chapter 3. I invite you to hear now the word of the Lord. Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. And Moses led his flock beyond the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And there the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of a bush. He looked, and the bush was blazing, yet it was not consumed. And then Moses said, I must turn aside and look away from this great sight and see why the bush is not burned up. And when the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses replied, Here I am. And then God said, Come no closer, remove the sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. God said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. And then the Lord said, I have observed the misery of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cry on account of their taskmasters. Indeed, I know their suffering. And I have come down to deliver them from the Egyptians and to bring them up out of the land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the country of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. The cry of the Israelites has now come to me. I have also seen how the Egyptians oppress them. So come, I will send you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring out the Israelites out of Egypt? God replied, I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you that it is I who sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God on this mountain. But Moses said to God, If I come to the Israelites and say to them, The God of your ancestors has sent me to you, they will certainly ask me, What is God's name? What shall I say to them? And God said to Moses, I am who I am. Thus you shall say to the Israelites, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, Thus you shall say to the Israelites, The Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this my title for all generations. Let us pray. Draw near to us, O God. Make your name known to us in the stillness of this time. Free us from the distractions of life and help us to be present in this time as we gather around your table. Amen. So in terms of important life events, Moses might document this one as a big one. I mean, how often is it that you're minding your own business in your own world, leading a flock of sheep around the wilderness to the mountain of Horeb, thinking about how good and great life really is, when out of nowhere a bush is consumed and a voice calls out your name, Moses, Moses. I'm here. I'm paying attention. You've got my attention. I'm sure Moses looked around to see where the cameras were set up, where the tricksters were who were playing this magnificent, marvelous trick to set a bush on fire, and then, in a big and loud voice, call out his name. Moses, Moses, Moses. Moses, stunned and a little bewildered, hears God, a God who listens. A God who listens to the pleas of those who are crying out for justice, for mercy, for hope in the darkness. And Moses hears God as God speaks, I have seen, I have heard, I have known. I have seen the affliction of my people. I have heard their cries. I know that their suffering is real. God and Moses in a conversation. And Moses begins to learn in this moment the ways of God. A God who is listening. A God who hears and understands and is in the struggle, not just in the big ones, the small ones as well. A listening God who calls to a contented shepherd, Moses, come. I have a plan. I have an idea. And you are part of that idea. Moses understood, no doubt, that God was going to ask him something, for it's not an everyday occurrence that you're minding your own business and you're well in your way to your good life, and God stops you in your tracks, asks you to remove your flip-flops and come near. Moses, content in his new life, leading a flock of sheep for his father-in-law, is doing just fine, pushing further and further with the sheep through the wilderness to the mountaintop. And then God begins to make God's next move. A little bit more risky, a little more challenging, for God has received the attention of Moses, and Moses is all ears. And God says, so I need you to go talk to Pharaoh. You know, Pharaoh, the main leader, the head boss, the one at the reign of terror and horror, the one who many fear. Go talk to him. Tell him about what is going on, and that I need for you to lead my people away out to a new land. Remember, Moses' first response was, here I am. And now Moses begins to backtrack. Who am I that I should go? Moses is resistant to God's unlikely call to respond, to act, to go, to confront. Good idea, God. I get where you're going, but I think I'm going to go back to the flock now. They're sheep that need my attention. God assures Moses that there is no one behind the camera. There was no one playing any sort of trickery. I am the God of your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I will be with you, and together we will be on a great adventure. Moses is still not sure. He's resistant, holding on. I have sheep to watch. I'm really fine where I am. My life is good. I'll keep doing what I've been doing it, the way I've been doing it, and that's okay. God says, share my name. Give Pharaoh my calling card. I am who I am has sent you. The Old Testament lesson draws us to a burning bush, but it also introduces a pattern of conversation that God begins with people. A conversation starter like the burning bush certainly stops us in our tracks. We could call it a sign of faith. God finding a way to grab our attention, to shake, rattle, and roll us a little bit. God hears the cries of the people. I have seen, I have heard, I have known. God is listening. God is listening in the pain and suffering, and God is not limited to a calendar year or a clock. For God's time is different, and God's pattern that God revealed to Moses on the mountain is the pattern that God continues to use in this time, in this place. For God continues to listen to our cries, to our pleas, and God continues to invite us to be part of a new beginning. But God's invitation comes at cost, doesn't it? And so let's look for a little bit at the pattern. God listens, God hears, and God speaks. God sends these beautiful invitations each and every day, and we say, "Here I am. I'm listening, God." God says, "Remove your flip-flops, your high heels, your boots, and let's talk." And then as God speaks, there is that, well, I don't know if that's really for me. I don't think I can talk to the pharaohs of the day. I don't think I have that gift or quality. I don't think that you're talking to the right person. And God affirms, "I will be with you. You have nothing to fear. I am the God who led Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. I will be with you. Just give them my calling card." The timeless pattern guides our hearts, our minds, and hopefully our actions to respond to a world in need. God's invitations are not always like they were to Moses. And if that's what we're always looking for, a bush that is burning but not consumed, we may miss timeless opportunities, for our backs may be to what is right in front of us. All we need to do is turn around and see the 101 or 1,001 or 10,001 invitations that God sends to us each and every day that go unheard or unnoticed because we're looking for something big and consuming instead of the invitations that Amy read for us today. Let love be genuine. Hate what is evil. Extend hospitality to the stranger. Weep with those who weep. No burning bushes, just the invitation to take off our shoes and begin a daily walk with God, sharing hospitality with a stranger, extending companionship to one another on a journey as we're trying to find God in our daily walk. As the pharaohs of the world continue to lead, the cries still go unanswered and needs go unmet. Is God not listening any longer? I do not believe that is the case. For I believe that God is faithful. God is listening. And God is looking for partners, workers in the wilderness, in the vineyard, in the community, in the workplace, in the world. These daily opportunities that present themselves are not missed opportunities, but new beginnings to forge the partnership, the ongoing work of God in the world. God is faithful, listening to the hearts of the people, and through God's timeless pattern of invitation, invites us to come and find a sacred space unlikely and uncertain spots. And God is calling us, not Moses, but by name. So be on the lookout. Be ready. No hidden cameras, no trickery. God is calling us by name. In 1997, I was an intern at a local United Methodist congregation in Dallas, Texas. The intern committee was a mixture of a lot of different people within the congregation, and one, a very life-experienced Texan. He was a difficult person for me to get my arms around, and every time I would preach, I could just wait for his comments. Interesting. Never heard that one before. Been reading the Bible for 40 years, and you certainly have an interesting look at it. I was challenged, almost fearful of what he was going to say, and I thought for sure he would make it possible so I would not pass my internship. On our last meeting, we were invited to go around the circle and share a highlight of what had been good or not so good from the experience. As I waited, I was fearful of what he was going to say. And I was ready to take it on. No longer would I sit and smile and say, oh, I'll do better next time. And he reached under his seat and pulled out a bread loaf. It was in a brown bag, and I thought, oh no. And he pulled out the loaf, and it looked very normal, very well-shaped. And then he pulled out the rest of the loaf, which was bumpy and lumpy and made the loaf 2 times the size of the first part. And he said, I want to thank you for helping me to see a larger Jesus. You helped to extend and expand what I originally saw. And this loaf of bread, which I had to work to create, helped me to see the larger face, the larger call of Jesus in my life. We are given invitations. Are we up to respond? Or will we be complacent with resistance and what keeps us comfortable? God listens to our cries, to our pleas. Let us partner with a living and loving and ever-present God in this day, in this age. Amen. In this place for a time. And the time is now to leave, to go out into the world, to be listening to a God who listens for our call, for our pleas. And as the hymn just stated, let the response be, and let it begin with me. Let us go in peace, knowing that God, a God who has always been and always will be with us wherever we may go. Let us go in peace.